When it comes to Souls games, if we don't want a live service title and we don't want rushed shovelware that fails to innovate or engage, we should ask ourselves what the ideal support cycle looks like going forward. Elden Ring has been a less than ideal example, highlighting the cost of extended development, not only with its initial release, but also with its DLC. 2.5 years is way too long for even the most fervent fans, and speaking from experience, it seriously damaged my time with Shadow of the Erdtree. The expectations were set too high. How could whatever they release possibly live up to constant, day in, day out daydreaming about everything they could or couldn't do with an expansion? I wished for Covenants, I begged for better PvP. There was so much I could only hope for and never receive. And that's exactly what only having major releases tends to look like. Elden Ring received around 16 patches before the DLC, and while some of them added very good ideas like the ability to invade near and far and the dedicated PvP arenas, many of them were of minimal consequence. Adding additional content through patches is something a developer needs to plan for and pace if they expect to keep players engaged. It will eat into development time and likely does little to generate revenue, but it can be critical to the long-term health of the game. In my last video, I talked about the potential of FromSoft making a live service game, and the reaction in comments was somewhat negative. The term carries baggage that many people can't get past, and I can't say I blame them. As a concept, it intrigues me, but as a framing device, it is not my best work. Instead, it's probably best to focus on something less drastic and more in line with how FromSoft currently handles development. Rather than them trying to reinvent a wheel, we can ask what's fair to expect from their existing styles, those being major releases and minimal communication. We were spoiled with Dark Souls 2, Bloodborne, and Dark Souls 3 all releasing within just 5 years. They set the standard for Souls as a tour de force and a genre unto itself. Suddenly, every game needed to compare itself to a series with unmatched staying power, defying every contemporary mainstay. In such a short period of time, From Software cemented itself as a gamer-hold name where you could not step foot onto anything even resembling an RPG forum without someone telling you you need to play Dark Souls. And FromSoft took that success and sat on it for years. They pondered what they wanted, how to improve their formula. They released some game called Sekiro. They cooked. But despite COVID, despite the earned breathing room, despite everything that justifies the wait, Elden Ring took too long to come out. It didn't matter how good the game was because it did nothing to help the time between. We were fortunate that Dark Souls 3 had a stronger replayability cycle, and the community stayed with it for as long as they did. Because while Dark Souls 3 got 2 DLCs within a year of release, the updates stopped shortly thereafter. People kept playing, but not because there was anything new to do. They just had nowhere else to go, and there was still fun to be had. Invasion zones and player creativity did the heavy lifting. But even then, much of the playtime was spent talking about all the things players wanted fixed in a follow-up game. If only they knew. To add to those woes, Elden Ring on release didn't have the staying power of Dark Souls 3, and the gap before Shadow of the Erdtree was a similarly bad wait. I was only able to launch my channel and gain a bit of traction because so many other creators had abandoned the space. Their leaving was understandable, and I even put off releasing videos for years until I actually felt compelled to talk about how frustrated I was with the wait for Shadow of the Erdtree. And now that it has come and gone, bringing nothing to improve longevity, we're right back where we started. We don't have a replacement to Dark Souls 3, and we may never get one. So let's focus on what we'd like to see going forward and how From could avoid such pitfalls. I'd like to see them follow up on what they've started with Elden Ring patches and improve on multiplayer-focused content gradually after release. Multiplayer is the longevity lifeblood of any Souls game, no question. Playing with others varies the game in a way no planned experience ever could, and getting the Coliseum update helped to revitalize the player base for a bit and gave people reasons to keep tuned in. Still, that was almost a full year after the initial release, at a time when most fans were anticipating a full-fledged DLC any day. And while it was a nice gesture, the suggestion of PvP, it wasn't exactly perfect. They should have kept going and done more with the arenas, but seeing as it was just content that didn't make the release deadline, it makes sense why they stopped where they did. They had no intention of doing anything more than finishing what they started. Still, it demonstrated that something like a new arena or new mode could do wonders every so often to keep a game going. And if you're thinking that it's just not worth the financial investment to continue support, I'd point out that it's a much more complicated matter than raw numbers. Keeping an active, healthy community can build your reputation and engagement far beyond a single, isolated release. Ask anyone involved in games marketing how impactful streamers are to a game's success. If a game can stay alive with small, gradual improvements, the benefits can pay off tremendously. And those sorts of small updates are opportunities for a developer to experiment and expand on some niche aspect of their game, like invasions. I hear it constantly, that invasions are only participated in by the smallest fraction of the player base, and no one cares about it, nor should they. But those people are clearly missing the point of an invasion. By being invaded, or even avoiding being invaded, they are participating. Changes to that system stand to improve their experience just as much as the invaders, and it makes sense that it would take time after release to zero in on what about invasions, and PvP broadly, needs improved. I have accused FromSoft of not properly testing many aspects of the PvP before release, and I stand by that as an existing issue. I also understand that there are many aspects that cannot be properly tested until deployed in the field. I have been designing my own TTRPG on and off for years, and I have many ideas that I think are fantastic, that I test with a few people, that I am certain will work. Then they immediately fall apart the second I get into a real session. Reality is unpredictable. To survive, you must adapt. And gradual updates post-release are an ideal way forward for an ever-chaotic landscape like Souls games. Elden Ring understands that and has simply failed to hit the mark. Too many foundational problems and not enough time, it would seem. But small, precise changes done periodically can give a game the longest possible life without artificially propping it up for the sake of profit. Tell me you wouldn't love a new arena that lets you play a non-deathmatch multiplayer mode with more than 6 players. Capture the Flag or King of the Hill are way more fun when everyone has a sword, and there's no reason they couldn't exist. Or what about covenants that actually progress over time, where completed goals are recorded and updated on a global scale, and the most successful covenants are periodically rewarded for their efforts? Souls games used to keep track of things like how many total deaths had occurred and who was in the top spot for which covenant. Taking that a few steps further feels like an easy win. And something like a boss rush mode would be a welcome addition. Solo would be fine, but I'd personally love to have the ability to queue as a team to try and take down as many bosses in rapid succession as possible. They could even have invasions during the boss rush.
It will be awesome!
Anything, however small, that actually encourages people to pick up the game and keep playing would be a worthwhile endeavor. Because additional content doesn't have to be huge. It doesn't need to be a whole new zone or new quest lines or anything like that. In a Souls game, giving people any reason to do something is generally good enough because the game can otherwise stand on its own merit. For people who aren't PvPers, the arena update still meant an increase in overall players and community interest. Letting people invade near and far and separating PvP scaling helped people really focus on what they wanted from the game and took nothing from those uninterested. The rising tide of mutual violence raises all ships. You don't have to want to participate directly to functionally act as a spectator by way of cooperation or just engaging with anything relevant to the game. Watching videos or going on forums or just talking about a game all constitute activity in the truest sense. It's engagement on a sincere level, and that yields inspiration time and again. There's nothing harder than being part of a community where no one cares, and that's where I fear Elden Ring is delving. Shadow of the Erdtree was neither the answer to our prayers nor the solution to our problems, and we have to accept that it's too late to change that. And beyond the balancing patches, no future content for Elden Ring as a game is planned. I fear we, as die-hard Souls players, are to be abandoned. And more than anything, I fear the wait for a replacement game because I'm already starving. So if Souls games want to keep their players, they should consider putting more into their multiplayer post-release, and they should dedicate development time to lay a foundation that they can build on, however subtly, to give everyone a chance to explore the possibilities. Let me know in the comments what the ideal long-term support looks like for you, and let me know anything else you're playing or looking forward to. While there aren't any replacement games in my mind, there's probably something to hold some interest. Like the video if you liked it, and subscribe for more. Until next time, thank you for watching.